swing is going to be a grand slam home run. Swing and drive, belted right. Welcome to the show.
Fun episode today on the call up. We have a mailbag where we're going to be answering a handful of your questions. And then we are going to be talking 2023 Bowman draft. Jack and I are going to be drafting ourselves our top autographs that we want to chase in this product as it is set to release in a couple weeks. I'm Arm Layton. He's Jack McMullen, and we've been excited to dive into Bowman draft, so I'm pumped about that, Jack. We're going to be doing some redrafts as well. We didn't want to do just too much draft in one episode and confuse people. And we've also been overdue for a mailbag, and I feel like it's the perfect time to do it because things are about to get crazy. You know, we're going to be chasing our own tail, trying to recap all of the prospects getting traded soon enough with the winter meetings coming around. So I thought this was the perfect time to answer questions that were asked on our Twitter page, and we got some good ones.
Yeah, we got some great ones. Just fair warning, the first 20 minutes of the show are going to be dedicated to Sebi Zavala's long-term value because he was the minor league caliber guy traded in the Eugenio Suarez deal. Sebi Zavala, 32-year-old, I want to say. I've watched him play more than I'd like to admit. We're not doing Sebi Zavala. I'm very excited for this one. Some great questions in the mailbag.
Hey, Carlos Vargas, you're really not giving my dude enough credit. 100 mile an hour fastball and 6 walks per 9. So, yeah, that was a fun trade. I'm looking forward to more exciting trades coming forward here in the next couple of days and in the next week or so. But those who asked us the questions, thank you so much. Usually we'll try to give a little bit more notice. This was kind of a last minute thing. And normally we'll try to answer a few more questions, but because of this Bowman Tops related segment, we wanted to give that a little bit extra time too, because it's a really fun way to, one, talk about the product, and two, highlight some of those players that have autographs in that product that will be coming out in a few weeks. So we'll start with the first question, Jack, because I thought that this was a great opener and a great primer to the rest of the conversations that we're going to have. And I think this is something that you could go a bunch of different directions because this seems to be something that happens every single year. And the question is, which low regarded minor league system can surprise in 2024? We're going to answer a question of who did surprise us last year. That's going to be at the end. So kind of doing like a full circle here, but that comes from Michael Burrill. I hope I said that right, on Twitter. It's a good question because there's a few different systems that could surprise, and then there's probably one or two that we won't even mention that end up being pleasant surprises, and we're like, wow. But I think the one team that we have the common ground on here is the Blue Jays. And there's a few reasons why I think the Blue Jays can kind of make that leap. Jack, I'll give it to you first, and then I'll just try to like fill in the dots, I guess, or just kind of fill in any blanks, because you did say Blue Jays first before we hit record. And I can probably nerd out about, a couple little between the margins types of players that, we might not get to. But why do you think the Blue Jays can be a pleasant surprise in 2024 farm system wise?
Yeah, so the way that I kind of look at this is layered, and it really consists of two major layers, and then I guess some filling if you want. But I look at guys that can make their major league debut or have their first full taste in the major leagues and show that they were good prospects or underrated prospects in 23 with a good first big league cameo in 24. The other layer is the lower level guys, the recent draftees, the recent international signings that do make, their first great impression in full season minor league ball. So that's the way that I kind of look at it. And the way that I see Toronto is 2024 will be the first big league taste for Ricky Tiedemann, Aroldis Martinez, probably Addison Barger, and our guy Damiano Palmegiani, who I think is going to impress more than people expect. The other layer is you get your first taste of Arjun Nimmala. Hopefully you get your first full season of a healthy Brandon Barrera. They were very careful with him. He was dealing with a couple of flare-ups. I think it was a shoulder, then it was an elbow. They said, screw it, we're done with that. Also, your first full season look at the two pitchers that they took this year, and Landon Marutis and Jerron Watts-Brown. I'm fascinated by both those guys. I thought they kicked ass in the draft. So the lower level first full season debuts are fascinating to me. And I think that Orelvis is going to be a good big leaguer. I think that Tiedemann will come with the intrigue, and he's going to be a good big leaguer. And Parmigiani, man, if he gets 100 games in the major leagues, I don't know if he will. Let's say he gets 70 games in the major leagues. If he gets 70 games, I think he hits 10 to 15 home runs.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head here, because there's so many different ways where I think certain players in the system can elevate their status. And that's basically what it boils down to, right? Elevating your prospect status, whether it's through performing at the lower levels and asserting yourself as a 50 to 55 future value guy, or asserting your dominance at the big league level. And as you mentioned, there's guys, I think there's almost, this is a very, I don't want to say polarizing, but I mean, in terms of where guys are at in their development, it is kind of all the way on one side and all the way on the other, in terms of you have a bunch of guys knocking on the door of a big league debut, and then you have a bunch of guys at the lower levels who we haven't really seen much of yet. And then there's not a lot in between. There's not a lot of high A, double A guys that, have had a nice season or two under their belt that, we're looking to see if they can keep building on that. So that kind of adds to the volatility of a system. And I think people are somewhat lower on the system, and understandably so, because Martinez is almost one of the top names that you could highlight as a prospect fatigue guy. But we've talked about the adjustments that he's made in the box that have made him a much better hitter, and a guy that I actually think is going to be a contributor for them next year, potentially at the hot corner, still just 22 years old. And then Ricky Tiedemann, we just talked a couple episodes ago about how important that AFL stint was for him, because it wasn't just about going out there and having success. We know the stuff's going to play. It's about going out there, throwing 75 plus pitches, and then throwing again 5 days later and throwing 75 plus pitches, and not having any pain, not seeing your stuff diminished, and just being able to continuously have that starter's workload. So those two guys, I think, will make a big league impact if healthy next year. And then, Namal is a guy that is a top 100 prospect for us because of the upside and how much we think he can just kind of explode and burst onto the scene. And then Barger is somebody that, when you look at the underlying data, he really does check a lot of boxes. He's battled injuries. I wouldn't be surprised if he's somebody that could battle Orelvis Martinez to get some reps in the infield as well, or potentially in a corner outfield spot too. So all of those guys really impressive in terms of, what I think they can do this year. And I think you're spot on with Barrera. If he can just be healthy, I've seen him up to 98. Before the injuries, he was up to 98 in camp and things like that. So lefty with that kind of stuff, seems like he's cut from the Tiedemann cloth. So if he's healthy, he could become a top 100 prospect very quickly. And then one name that I think is pretty underrated that could end up pitching some big league innings for them, and I think it just solidify himself as a really solid 50 future value type guy, is Chad Dallas, right-hander, 23 years old, had a really nice season between high A and double A, misses bats, fills up the zone enough, and I think that's a really solid guy as well. But I think the two that could really make this system, kind of push it into the middle of the pack, or even better than that, are the two guys you mentioned. And Marutis, is it Marutis?
I think it's Marutis. It's not Marutis. I think it's Marutis. And
Watts Brown, both very volatile, high upside though. And if things click for those guys, all of a sudden you get some fun pitching in the system. A healthy Tiedemann, a healthy Barrera, and these are big ifs, but again, this is why they're going to be surprising potentially. Yeah. And then Watts Brown and Marutis with, Chad Dallas as well. And whatever you get from Zulueta, all of a sudden you get some decent layering to your pitching situation here. So, I really like the Jays, at least upside here. It's very volatile. There's injuries. There's, like we mentioned, the polarization of where these guys are at in their development, but there's something to dream on here. And I think that's why this system could definitely surprise in certain ways. Yeah. Adam Macko also, like, some decent flashes, got added to the 40. They acquired him from the Mariners. The velo is kind of but he misses bats. That's another guy to keep an eye on. But is there another system, before we move to the next question, that you feel like could potentially surprise some folks this coming year?
Yeah, and this one has more proximity. I also don't know how good the big club is going to be. I think that they are one of the more perplexing big league situations that we've got, and it was only my feelings on that front were only elevated by the Kenta Maeda signing, but Detroit's my other one. And I think that the upper levels are fascinating for Detroit, because next year we're looking at the first fair shot in the major leagues for Colt Keith, for Justin Henry Malloy, for Parker Meadows, for Sawyer Gibson Long, probably. And for Justice Bigby, if there's space, you've got complementary pieces there with Jace Young, who, by the way, just won a minor league Gold Glove at second base. Wow. Ty Madden, who I'm very high on, Wilmer Flores, Dylan Dingler looked good when he was healthy. And in the last 365 days, hell, in the last like 100 days, they've added Max Clark to the fold. They've added McGonigal to the fold. They've added Hao Yu Lee in that Lorenzen deal from Philly. And one man's trash is another man's treasure in Eddys Leonard. Leonard hit the shit out of the ball with Toledo after he was picked up for scraps from the Dodgers, where he was really underperforming. Leonard was like 8th or 9th on the middle infield depth chart for the Dodgers. The Dodgers are the Dodgers. Detroit's an entirely different situation. So I like Leonard's ability to play meaningful big league games for the Detroit Tigers. There are just so many names that could factor in if the big club falters. And like, who's to say Ty Madden doesn't get a shot if Manning sucks again? Or if Reese Olson has a 6 ERA through 8 starts? There are so many different ways that I can fit all these names into the big league fold in 24. That's why I kind of ID'd these guys.
Dude, I wouldn't waste that many Jackson Joe bullets in the minor leagues either. If he's filling up the zone in AA and potentially AAA, let him finish his development at the big league level, especially if your rotation's not filled out. We were talking about that on the Just Baseball show. Like, it might be filled out. We'll see. But if you have some guys go down, Mize, isn't quite back or has a flare up, you don't know what's happening with Madden or whatever. If they want to bring up Job, I think he can hold his own there and potentially really impress. So that's a guy that I wouldn't be surprised to see get some action next year. And then Kevin McGonigal is a top 100 prospect for us. He really showed out in his pro debut, and I love the bat there. And then Hao Yu Lee, we've talked about as, I think, somebody that is very overlooked and underrated. And in that trade, there's a reason why I think the Tigers ID'd him in that Lorenzen deal. And the guy can swing it. I saw a little bit in the AFL, and I liked what I saw. So this is a fun system. Honestly, kind of overlooked it as an option for this question because in my mind, I already look at the system as pretty solid. But I think to your credit, I don't think a lot of people see the system that way. So it is a good answer to this question, but almost with my preconceived notions, I didn't even really think about them as an option because to me, this is a really solid system.
Right. What do you think of Leonard's big league abilities? Like, do you think that this guy can be a big leaguer?
I do. I wish he could defend a little bit more, but if you're sticking that guy at second or third, and at least he can play multiple positions, he hits the ball pretty hard and he's made some improvements in the bat to ball department. It was absolutely worth the flyer for him or for them, I should say, the Tigers. And he's going to get a lot of looks this year. I do think that. And if he can hit, I mean, I think he'll stick around. The approach was the last time I checked in, the approach was the challenge, but he's young. Like another guy that I think people assume is way older than he is because he climbs quickly.
He just turned 23.
Yeah.
My thing is the
definitely be a
Dodgers.
piece.
My thing is the Dodgers probably looked at him and Yorbit Vivas as like the Spider-Man meme. Like, you guys are the same. Which one do we want moving forward? And they ID'd Vivas. I think they made the right decision.
Yes.
That doesn't mean both can't be good.
No. And I think the defense probably made it ultimately the easier decision. And they realized like, hey, he might get Rule 5'd, if we keep waiting and don't try to cash him in for something or move on. So I think that's kind of where they ended up settling in. The last thing is Wilmer Flores. I think he could move to a reliever role, especially now with the pitching depth that they have. And if Wilmer moves to a reliever role, I think he could be a really good one. With that breaking ball, it's just disgusting. And I think for him, the fastball ticks up out of the bullpen. He could be a really solid high leverage reliever for them. And I think that actually enhances his value to a degree. So it'll be interesting to see how they decide to handle Wilmer Flores this coming season. Next question. This kind of ties into what we were just talking about. I know there's a Ty Madden tie-in here, but this comes from Alex, who's Just Lions on Twitter. Been a long time listener and always a guy that I like to get into the mailbag. I think he's got to have like a 4 mailbag streak here. I'm just always gonna try to fit a Alex question in, but of course it's a little bit Mariner slanted, but leaves us open-ended to anything. Who is this year's Bryce Miller / Bryan Woo who can kind of come out of nowhere and become major league quality arms? So this was a hard question because, and I don't want to like toot our own horn too much, but it was hard for us to like fully interpret when we were talking pre-record because we did have Bryce Miller on the top 100 ahead of last year, and we did have Bryan on the top 100 ahead of last year. So, and again, like, I'm not saying that to just be like, hey, like we told you so. I'm saying because like they were on our radar. So their performance, while, you know, it was impressive and exciting and maybe even exceeded our expectations to a degree, I had mid-rotation upside on both of those guys. And that's where we had them when we talked about them, you know, going into the season. So those guys I know were a surprise to like the larger baseball community. But I guess we have to try to zoom out here to who are the guys that are pretty much consensus outside of the top 100 that could be factors here. And I don't think that there's a guy in our top 100 pitching wise, at least at this moment, that is on ours and is on nobody else's and can impress the way Miller and Woo were. So I think it kind of just sets us up to look outside and try to find some either players with some prospect fatigue that people may have already kind of looked past and you know, give the depth arm grade to, or guys that I think people just may not realize can make an impact as soon as next year. So with that lead in, the floor is yours, Jack.
Yeah, so my guy's Madden. And Madden is not a data darling like Miller and Woo are. That's the thing. It's hard for me to kind of identify the data darling. But I will say there are so many questions when it comes to the Detroit Tigers rotation. Like, hey, how's Mize going to look? How's Manning going to look? How's Reese Olson going to look? Shit, dude, how are Skubal and Maeda going to stay healthy? Like, there's a question with each of the five. So then the first one you go to is Job. If we said Job, that's doing a disservice because he's a top, 30, 40 prospect. Madden is outside the top 100. But Ty Madden checks the boxes that I look for. K rate has gone up from college to the pro ball. Walk rate has gone down from college to pro ball. He's sporting a 3.2 ERA in 240 minor league innings. He's figuring out ways to get outs. This last year in Erie, he threw a ton of innings. 118 innings in AA is a lot. Punched out 11 per 9, walked fewer than 4 per 9. I'm in on that, man. And like, those are the kind of guys that I shove out there and I'm not worried. If Faedo was healthy, I think this is a very similar conversation to what we would have had with Alex Faedo. I was expecting that guy to be a safe option for them. He clearly wasn't healthy enough to be a safe option for them. Yeah. But if Madden can stay healthy, I think this guy is, one of those that slows the heart rate when shit hits the fan in the Tigers rotation.
Yeah. And what's really interesting about Madden is there's a few things here. One, I think the consistency side of it's really important. Is he going to have the low 3s ERA as a rookie? Probably not. But if he's a high 3s, low 4s and throwing every fifth day and compiles innings, I think that's something that's very, very attainable, especially in Comerica. But, the fastball, it's not dead zone, but it's also, you mentioned not a data darling guy. Like, it's also not really anything great. When you look at the shape, the release height, extension, all of those things, it's kind of run of the mill in some ways, but again, has more life than, a dead zone type of fastball. Where he's made some gains and continues to make gains is in the velocity department. It's pretty low effort. And he saw a tick up going into last year, and then his velocity increased as the season went on. And over his last 10 starts, he was averaging 96 miles an hour with his fastball, whereas he was 95, 94 and change in the first half of the season. So the fastball velocity tick up. We saw the command of it improve. So, I mean, you have even slightly average or slightly above average shape, but you're able to locate and the velocity's up. And that's at least an average or slightly above average fastball now. I think it's closer to a 55. That helps a lot. And then his slider has always been good for him. So now working off of that, the slider was playing really well and the slider ticked up. So that pitch now at 85 was playing even better. So I think that was another side of it. And then started to find a better feel for the changeup. And I think that was big. And then mixes in a curveball and a cutter. From what I've been told about Ty Madden, he's one of the more cerebral pitchers you're going to find too. And I love that when you have a guy that's, maybe not going to jump out, with the stuff, it's good. And you're sitting 96 with a fastball, like that's going to play. But when you don't have the 3 above average pitches or, a slew of just wipeout pitches, I love a cerebral pitcher who's always looking on how to sequence and how to just make his stuff as effective as possible. And between the fastball, slider, and change with the 2 taste breakers and the curve and cutter, I think he can just kind of, you always talk about like massaging your way through lineups. I think he can do that. And when he's on, he'll get his strikeouts. I think he can have those 7, 8, 9 strikeout games when he's really on. But I also think he's going to be able to give you those 5, 6 innings, 3 runs, 1 or 2 walks and 5 Ks. And you're like, we'll take that every 5th day.
And I'll tell you right now, Detroit's going to need those by late May. That's almost a sure thing because there's a question surrounding each of the 5 in the opening day rotation.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. And for me, my answer is Mason Black. And we talked about him recently, San Francisco Giants prospect, who I was really high on once we dove deeper into that system. And I started to look at some of the pitch shapes and just the uniqueness of kind of what he has going for him. I think he's a really fun arm. He gets a little bit more extension than a time add. But I think what really stands out is that low release point. I mean, he's releasing from about a 4-seam fastball or 2-seam. He's got 2 variations of it from a 5.4 foot release height, which is pretty low with the carry and the horizontal run that he gets. And it's kind of out to the side. It's slingshotty. We talked about how to kind of just hiding the ball and it getting in on hitters really quickly. He's just an uncomfortable at bat. And that's what made Bryan Woo and Bryce Miller guys that could make the leap straight from AA with, limited track record and have this success was hitters just couldn't really calibrate the fastball. And I think that's what Mason Black's going to be able to do. He throws his fastball a ton and opponents hit, below the Mendoza line against it. And he was able to either blow it by you at 94, 95 with the 4-seamer or get you to roll over on weak contact with the sinker. It's slingshot, release point, kind of hard to pick up. I think that funkiness can make him a really solid pitcher going into next year for the Giants, who will probably need him too. And then that slider is just nasty as well. But this is a guy that I just feel like can get away with a high level of fastball dependency because of the deception, because of the release height, because of the shape to his pitches and the late movement. And I'm expecting him to give some big leaguers some uncomfortable at-bats.
All right, bonus points. If you can name the conference and the team name for Lehigh. Mason Black, 25-year-old from Lehigh. He's going to turn 24 on December 10th.
Lehigh, they're in the
CJ McCollum.
Oh, they're in the Patriot League. And they're the Lehigh, I want to say like Iron Pigs because of Lehigh Valley.
Right.
Lehigh, I'm going to be mad when you tell me because I had a friend that pitched with Mason Black.
For my life, I couldn't tell you this team name.
Okay, what is it?
The Mountain Hawks.
Yeah, no, okay. I'm not mad at all. I had no idea.
Yeah, I'm good. You got some bonus points with the Patriot League.
Yeah, that's funny. I saw Black throwing Brewster on the Cape, and just nice. One of those guys where the setup in Brewster, you're sitting kind of up against the fence there, and most of the places on the Cape, it's like that when you're broadcasting on the road. But just one of those pop of the glove type guys where you just hear the ball whizzing in and pop of the glove. And I saw a starting pitcher. You see the college from Lehigh. I'm like, all right, this guy's either going to be mediocre or really unique, and he was really unique. And fast forward, he's going to be throwing big league innings this coming season. Anybody else for you that you kind of wanted to highlight real quick?
Not really. It was kind of a tough one for me to wrap my brain around, probably because I'm stupid or tired. I think it's a combination of both. But I don't know. I also kind of interpreted this question as, hey, who can rise when we really don't know who they are? Because the consensus, baseball world, the common baseball fan did not know who Bryce Miller or Bryan Woo was. And I went to Peyton Pallette with the White Sox. I think if this guy's healthy and can throw strikes, it's 99 from a small athletic human being. And that can shoot him up like a rocket ship for a team that's going to need pitching so badly.
No doubt. I had a name that I told you before we hit record and I already forgot. Did you?
It was Black and it was.
Come on. Do you ever listen to me? This is the test.
I do.
Okay. Who was it?
I'm blanking.
Yeah, I'm blanking too. If it comes back to me, we'll circle back. Sorry, Jack and I are just cooked right now. We'll circle back because there was another name that I did like, and we'll discuss that. But another question from Caleb Sanders at Up Next MILB. Great Twitter, your X username, by the way. Who has the higher ceiling, AJ Smith-Shawver or Hurston Waldrep? Of course, pair of Braves prospects. We've talked about Smith-Shawver, and I feel like both Smith-Shawver and Vaughn Grissom have just been victims of circumstance. And I don't want to say victims because they got their clock started early, and I think they're very happy and actually applaud the Braves for approaching it that way and allowing them to potentially help them at the big league level. Where I say victim is where the prospect community starts to look at these guys, because Smith-Shawver just turned 21 years old a week ago. And now, because he's graduated from the prospect ranks and also, struggled a little bit in AAA, and then in the big leagues, we're like struggling to figure out where this guy lines up in the prospect world. I don't think it's that difficult, because think about it from this lens. If Smith-Shawver had a traditional path up through the minor leagues, look at how good he was at the lower levels before they started fast tracking him. He was so good that they said, oh shit, this guy can maybe help us now. And the fact that he did, but also, had natural growing pains as a 20-year-old right-hander pitching for one of the best teams in baseball, if not the best, I think it's almost caused us to lose perspective on who he is as a player and where he's at, because we're almost pitting him against himself. I saw somebody respond to me on Twitter that Vaughn Grissom's a quadruple A guy. And I'm like, no. Ooh, the way he's been handled is synonymous with how AAA guys are handled, but that's because he skipped through the minor leagues and then got up to the big leagues immediately. And then they had a better option in terms of shortstop defensive ability in Orlando Arcia. So Grissom was kind of caught in flux. There's a difference between caught in flux and a quadruple A guy. A 22-year-old can't be a quadruple A guy. And AJ Smith-Shawver is kind of the same thing here, right? But even more talented in terms of you can't use the struggles at the upper levels against him. And even if you're not consciously doing that, it's hard to see those numbers and value him the same way as a guy that's dominating in low A and high A, but you should. Or if anything, you should almost value him more because it's really impressive what he was able to do last year.
Yeah, I remembered your guy. It was McDermott in Baltimore. It's McDermott.
We'll circle back to that after this.
I promise I listen. Yeah, this was a really hard one because I immediately wanted to say, oh, Smith-Shawver, and I'm not thinking twice about it. But then I thought twice about it, and then I thought a third time about it, and then maybe a fourth time too, because Waldrep, we've got concerns, surely, but that fastball being high 90s, that splitter's disgusting. It's hard for me to discount that guy and say, oh yeah, he's totally inferior to Smith-Shawver. Do I side with the athleticism of Smith-Shawver and the fastball breaking ball combo as opposed to the fastball splitter combo? I do, yes. Mm-hmm. But man, there's something to be really excited about with Waldrep. And I'm just not sure that I can cast him aside. And I would toss and turn a little bit if I was in Alex Anthopoulos' spot right now, where it was, hey, you've got the chance to go get Dylan Cease. You got to give me one of AJ Smith-Shawver or Waldrep. I'm like, I side Waldrep, but he could be awesome. This was a great question that I don't have a firm answer to, and I can be convinced any which way.
Yeah. So to kind of, I set the scene with Smith-Shawver and now setting the scene with Waldrep. We know how kind of polarizing his season was and just kind of his prospect status was. Some willing to tab him as the best arm in the draft, not named Paul Skeens. Others saying, I have a third round grade on him. And then most being somewhere in between. I think what we saw is that he's, closer to one of the best arms in that draft class already. And the fact that he finished the year in AAA is a testament to that. The guy just with the fastball splitter alone can turn over a lineup once and, go 3-4 innings and dominate. And he did that. We saw him do that through the minor leagues and even turned in a solid AAA debut. The one outing we saw of him up there against Durham, where he went 4 1/3, shutout, walked 3, struck out 5. We had outings of, I think if you look at the college game log, 13 Ks, 14 Ks, 10, 10, 12, 13, 12. Those aren't consecutively, but those are some of the most impressive outputs that we saw from him in the swing and miss department. But how about these walk numbers? 6, 6, 4, 4, 6, 4. Like there's a lot of those too. So that's my concern, but we're not talking here about who is the, I guess, higher floor prospect. The question was higher ceiling, right? Waldrep has the best pitch of the two of them, right? If you look at each individual pitch, neither or AJ Smith-Shawver doesn't have a better pitch than Waldrep splitter. Not a lot of pitchers in the minor leagues have a better pitch than Waldrep splitter. My concern is we don't really have a reliable breaking ball from Waldrep at this point. You know, we're still kind of waiting on that. And beyond that, the fastball is just confusing because part of me says, okay, I get it. Like the fastball kind of has to be this straight over the top heater. It's a 6.4 foot release height, by the way, which is really high for a four seamer. And that's why it was kind of hit hard in college at times. But at the same point, it's also part of the reason why the splitter plays so well. It's this straight over the top, almost Iron Mike type of release that makes it really hard to differentiate from the splitter until it's too late. So that makes the splitter really good, but it also makes his fastball worse. So it's this challenge. And I also think it's really hard to supinate from that Iron Mike type of release. So he's kind of struggling to balance the strengths and the weaknesses of that release point. And that's where my concern is. I personally think Smith-Shawver has the higher ceiling just because I could see a 3, maybe 4 pitch mix that's all above average. And his just field of pitch is better. And even though I love the splitter and I think that pitch can really make him unhittable through spurts, Smith-Shawver is going to be able to turn the lineup over a second, third time. And I don't know if Waldrep can do that. So it's kind of depending on what you see as a high ceiling though, too, right? Because you might get more swing and miss with Waldrep, but I think you're going to get more innings and more reliability. And at the end of the season, a better chance at 180 innings of 3 ERA baseball, which to me is more valuable. So
yes,
I think Smith-Shawver has the higher ceiling in terms of being everything you want out of a starting pitcher.
Yes. I think Waldrep, his 100th percentile, Waldrep's is a 2. His 70th is a closer and a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Smith-Shawver's 100th percentile is a 2. His 70th percentile is a 3, probably.
Yeah. Like a 3, like 3, 4. Yeah.
So I'm willing to side with the 3. I'd prefer a 3 over a closer, but based on the situation, you may prefer a closer over a 3. We'll see.
Exactly. But and it's also worth noting Smith-Shawver's a year younger.
And that's always younger. I know they're both technically 21.
Yeah. He's like 8-9 months younger.
Damn.
Like that's pretty crazy. Right. Yeah. And I think that side of it is intriguing as well. And makes it kind of fascinating. Wait, do I have that right? No, I might not have that right. Actually, I might have. Oh, no, I botched that. I believe they're not. Oh, no. I think I'm right. I don't know. I'm so bad with the months and then calculating. Yeah, they are 8 months apart. Okay, I did get that right. My fault.
21, 271, and Smith-Shawver just turned 21.
Yeah.
Smith-Shawver was born on November 20, 2002. Waldrep was born on March 1, 2002.
Welcome to the chaos that was my brain there for a second. I think Waldrep, and the one last thing I'll say is from that release point, if he has a sinker, that would play really well. But then you have that redundancy with the splitter. Again, there's just some things to figure out. But there is a world where kind of move some things around and maybe he does have a higher ceiling. So it's a really great question. But I'm going to go with Smith-Shawver if we're talking about these pitchers kind of as they are and how we're expecting them to continue to be. But again, great question.
All right, McDermott, revisit before we move on.
Yeah, McDermott's a name that I feel like has some intrigue, but I think a similar level of intrigue of what Bryce Miller and some others had, by the consensus in the industry going into, last year. McDermott traded from the Astros to the Orioles, and it had a really strong finish to the year last year. I've talked to some hitters that faced McDermott last year, especially when things were going well for him. And they said it was some of the most uncomfortable at-bats that they've had as a pro, not all year, as a pro. And you see that when he's on. I mean, it's really not a matter of guys hitting him well. It's really just Chase McDermott against himself. And you look at the Orioles situation, and I assume they're going to continue to try to fill out the rotation. But if McDermott's really throwing well, there'll be a spot for him. And what I like about McDermott is you've got a lot of life on the fastball, and a fastball that just seems to get on hitters way too quickly. They just seem to be uncomfortable. He gets some I like some sword type swings, and it has some good carry. He'll get up to 20 inches of induced vertical break, settles around 19 inches, but also has a relatively low release point for a guy that gets the extension that he gets and is as big as he is. And then the breaking balls, dude. I mean, that's what really stands out to me is when you have the breaking balls as nasty as he has them, in terms of just being able to throw an absolute wizard like sweeper at what is it, like 86 to 80, 87, sometimes, a little bit lower than that with even more sweep. And then just a banger curveball. Both of those pitches look like the fastball out of the hand. And that's the other really interesting thing is he does repeat the release point really well. So you have a fastball that can play as a plus pitch. You have a slider that can play as a plus pitch. You have a curveball that flashes plus. That's an arsenal that it really is all about. Can he just harness it a little bit? And if he can harness it a little bit, I think he can be a middle rotation type starter. Opponents hit 180 against his fastball. They hit 160 against his curveball. They hit 150 against his slider. And then he mixes in a splitter sometimes. They hit 130 against that. Opponents hit 170 cumulatively against him last year. Again, it's about McDermott versus McDermott at this point. And the walk rate did drop as the year progressed.
Yeah.
So I'm in on him. Next question, very open-ended. From Frankie at Walker_bets. And we got a couple questions on this front. What Cubs prospects do you see getting traded? I think Cubs fans will freak out if they don't make a big splash at this point, because I'm hearing Cubs fans wanting them to shell out money. Now I'm hearing, let's trade these prospects. I don't think we can properly speculate on who is going to get traded. I think we can say who we think is least likely to get traded.
Yeah.
But I think it's easier to just talk about it through the lens of who would you trade? And just assume that they're probably following some sort of similar logic. I think we start with the untradables and make it very simple here. Cade Horton ain't going anywhere for anyone. I'm not trading. There's not a player I don't think I would trade for Cade Horton for. Is there? I'm not trading Cade Horton for 1 year Juan Soto. I don't think I'm doing it.
How about how many years does Bo Bichette have?
Okay, that'd be the one.
Yeah, and they've been linked to.
I don't believe those rumors, to be honest. But if there is some merit to that, I would. That's the one guy I would trade. Horton for. I think, because it's not just Horton straight up, right? It's Horton plus. And I'd rather try to put together a permutation of that trade without Horton and give up more, like more solid pieces elsewhere.
Yeah.
When you have a pitching prospect that's arguably the best in the game and that's close to big league ready and as athletic as Horton, that's probably the most untradeable guy. No one's completely untradeable, to your point with Bichette. That's the most untradeable guy. I
would argue PCA is more untradeable.
Really? I would rather trade PCA than Horton.
Cool.
I think that, they kind of, and I know that it was unfair how quickly they rushed him and all those things, but I think they also are seeing there's some risk to the offensive side of the profile. And, he's a super highly regarded prospect, but, he's one of those guys where, when we look back at top prospect lists from like 8-10 years ago, there's a lot of players that had really solid careers, but, were ranked ahead of guys that were better than them because of the glove and the tools and the excitement. He's going to have a good big league career, but there's a chance that he's just a 2-3 win player. I think he could be a perennial all-star. We've talked about that, but there's a chance he's a 2-3 win player. And a lot of the value comes from the glove. Horton, I just feel like a very high probability middle rotation arm and a very decent chance of being a frontline type of dude. And they have some other pieces now kind of filling out the outfield. We'll see if they want to, go sign somebody like a Jung-Hoo Lee or bring back a Bellinger. If they do that, then it's, I think, a no-brainer that Horton's more untouchable.
Yes. So my thought on that was if I felt like the Cubs were in on the Bellinger sweepstakes, Horton is the more untradeable one. But frankly, based on the Yankee and the Giants connections to Bellinger right now, I'm not sure the Cubs are in the Bellinger sweepstakes.
Yeah.
And I hope I'm wrong because Bellinger's a great Cub. But man, like if they're out on the Bellinger thing, I don't see a world where they trade PCA, especially because Happ is a Gold Glover in a corner. He's not going to play center. Seiya is, in a corner. He's not going to play center. Owen Casey is a corner guy moving forward. He's not going to play center. Like he and Michael Harris are the two best defensive center fielders in the game.
Yeah.
And, like you've got a guy there that can hold that spot down for the next 6 years plus.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And ultimately, I mean, PCA's top 25 prospect for us for a reason.
Yeah.
If he's 260 with 15 to 20 bombs, he's a 4 to 5-1 player. So, I mean, and that's a very attainable stat line for him. And it might take a couple years. Even if it does take a couple years, this Cubs offense is going to be good. We know that. And PCA can be their 9-hitting glove first guy in center for a year or two until it all comes together.
Michael Harris hit like 8th.
Yeah, you're good. Exactly. And there's a lot of similarities to Mike. And just the bat to ball is not as good, but there's a lot of similarities to Money Mike. So I think he's number 2 for me on the most untradeable. And if they don't bring back or go get a center fielder, then it's 1A, 1B.
Yeah.
Who are you definitely open to moving? For me, and I know that Cubs fans are going to be kind of about this because they love El Jaguar or El Jaguar, if you want to say it properly. But Kevin Alcantara, like, I get it. It's exciting. It's tantalizing. It's fun. There's so much to dream on. And we saw some strides in the project department in terms of him making some major improvements. He was a big climber in our top 100 update. I'll be honest, though. Went out to the AFL. And look, I don't want to make a sweeping judgment on, I probably saw 5 games of his. He just looked rushed. The timing was inconsistent, and the defense is fine enough. Like, I think he could get by in center, but he's not a great center fielder. I think he's a good one. So I think he could be better than getting by, but a lot of length, really hard to control everything. And he just looked really uncomfortable at times in the plate and like really rushed. And I just wonder if he's really ever going to be able to hit enough. I don't know if he's going to be able to control all of that length to him, and if he does, he does. But I look at Owen Casey, especially if you have PCA in center. I believe in Casey's bat more. I think offensive upside wise, it's pretty close. The only difference is Alcantara is a better athlete. Great. Okay. How much impact is he going to give you defensively? How many bags is he going to steal? Like, yes, he's more athletic, but how much more value is that giving you? I like the left-handed power bat, which they don't have many of. I think that's a guy that I'm more likely to keep. You also know I've always been Casey over Alcantara. I'm like the only person on the planet that has felt that way. But I think Alcantara is the guy I'm most open to moving. And by the way, Matt Shaw is someone that I would put at number 3 as like least tradable. Like, I just don't want to move that guy because of how much I believe in him being able to be fast tracked. So for me, it's Alcantara as probably one of the more likely to be moved. And in terms of power ranking the guys I want to move the least, it'd probably go number Horton. 1, Horton, PCA,
Matt
Shaw, Casey.
Yeah, probably. So the way that I kind of did this, I had Kevin Alcantara down, and I wrote a little blurb next to it. Said, Kevin Alcantara, you're running out of space in the outfield with PCA, Seiya, Hap. You have depth in Canario, Casey, and eventually Morel makes that move, I think. I know you like Casey more, but some teams may be a bit more enticed by the dream of a realized Alcantara. So I think you can sell them on the dream of what could be to come. So Alcantara is number 1 on that, like, hey, you've got great value and I'm not totally tied to you. Number 2 on that list of, hey, you've got great value and I'm not totally tied to you is Ben Brown for me.
Yeah.
I don't want people to be fooled by others in the industry putting 260 grades on a slider and a curveball. Because I'm telling you, I watched several full starts of Ben Brown. I called several full starts. And there were starts where I saw 70% fastball, which was awesome, but it was 70% fastball, 30% slider.
Yeah.
Like, he's still trying to figure out what a curveball and a slider can do off the fastball. There's so much more reliever risk right now than there was in May. And I'm sure there are other teams that are looking at what he did, what his fastball is, what he flashed with the slider and the curveball. And it's like, yeah, we can make this guy a really good starting pitcher.
No doubt.
Sell them on that. Let them have that, because I'm team Wicks. I'm team
that was going to be
Wicks.
my question, is who would you rather have?
I think I'd rather have Wicks for the situation they find themselves in right now.
Bang. That's the answer, because they need somebody to give them rotational depth next season. Yes. And I think it's presumptive to assume that Ben Brown can do that, both from a health and a pitchability standpoint.
Yeah.
Wicks gave him 7 starts at a 4.4. And you assume he marginally gets better from that, you hope. But even if he is a 4.3, that's solid. You need guys like that. You need bodies. There's one, if you learn one thing from following a team for an entire year that is trying to hang in the race, it's that it's a war of attrition on the pitching side. So I feel like Wicks is a guy that you can feel pretty confident about staying healthy. A name that I think a lot of teams are going to have a ton of interest in, and I think it would be, I don't want to trade him because I think he's a good player, but again, where does he fit in? James Triantos. He was just out in the AFL. It's not a coincidence that you see a lot of these AFL prospects get moved because there's scouts out there watching them a ton. I have no doubts about the bat to ball skills of James Triantos. It's a 70 hit tool. And we've seen an uptick in the power. He's definitely become more, he's grown on me a lot in the AFL, experience of seeing him. Obviously you hit 4 whatever out there, that's going to help, but just seeing Triantos grow physically and add a little bit of impact is encouraging. But I don't like him at second. I don't like him at third. They're trying him in center. That might be the best spot for him, but he's not going to be great there. He might have to play left. I don't know where he plays. And a team may be willing to find that out because he's a good bat and he's 20 years old and all that good stuff. But I'm not letting Triantos stop me from getting, a good player here or there. Same thing with Ballesteros. I know that Cubs fans love Moises Ballesteros, but 20-year-old that probably isn't going to stick behind the dish. He's 5'7", so you can put that guy at first. Like all of the guys that you can put together a couple questions on, I'm happy to move them. And I think that's those handful of players there. And then maybe the one guy that I'd prefer to keep, but I'll move him because of the intrigue and how far off he is Jackson Ferris. I love Jackson Ferris. I thought he looked really good. Left-hander, mid-90s fastball, 6'4", had a nice season last year. But that's a guy that on your timeline, you're okay to move. And I think some semblance of a package of Alcantara, a few of any of these guys, Alcantara, Ben Brown, Ballesteros, Ferris, Triantos, Jefferson Rojas, who I actually think is the most underrated guy in the system. I'm sure teams will have interest in, or a Matt Mervis to sweeten the deal. They can get somebody of note in trading that group. So
they can get
those are the guys that I think are most likely to go. I think there's almost no chance PCA or Horton goes anywhere. And I'd be really surprised if Casey went somewhere because I do think that the Cubs are high on him and see him as a more likely contributor in the nearer future than Alcantara. That's why he's always been a level ahead despite being the same age. So I think Alcantara is the best prospect that they could likely move.
Alcantara, Brown, Triantos, and Canario for Bo Bichette. I think that gets it done for Bichette.
What was it? Alcantara, Brown,
Triantos, Canario.
No, because I think if you put it in the trade machine thing, it's probably fine. But just optically, you can't make that trade without getting one of PCA or Cade Horton. You can't.
You think so?
I think optically, you absolutely can't.
But we'll see how badly the Blue Jays want to trim.
Yeah, that's the thing. We'll see. But optically, that would be a tough one to sell to the Canadians. Yeah. I'll tell you.
I had Triantos. I said James Triantos capitalize on the hot AFL. And then I said 2 of the 3 of Mervis, BJ Murray, and Moises Ballesteros. Like they're all just kind of the same thing moving forward, I feel like.
Yeah. There's a little bit of redundancy in there, but the system is great. And I think that's why they should make a deal because they've got plenty of pieces to work with here.
Yeah.
Last question. This comes from Tyler Lewin, longtime listener. Great questions always. Which organization's farm system surprised you the most this past season? Whether that being whether that be impressed or disappointing.
Yeah.
So I think, you want to start on the positive or the negative?
Let's start on the positive and then we'll end with the negative.
Okay. Floor is yours.
Yeah. Boring answer from me. You were like, are we sure? And I was like, let's walk through, individual by individual. So we're going to do this. Baltimore was the most surprising good organization. And we knew going into the year that they had the best farm system in baseball.
Yeah.
I can make the argument that their farm system was twice as good as anybody else now at the end of this year. And I'm going to ask you, like literally yes or no, did this line for this player exceed your expectations? And I know that we both have pretty realistic expectations for guys in the minor leagues.
Yeah, I can also remember, I love all these guys so much that I can remember exactly where I stood going into the year. So I'll be honest on these. So go ahead.
Jordan Westburg, 67 games, hit 295 with a 940 OPS in AAA. That exceeds your expectations, does it not?
Yes, but I'd say that was one of the most marginal exceeding of my expectations. I've always loved him.
Jackson Holiday hit 320 with a 940 OPS and got to AAA.
Yeah, that definitely exceeded my expectations.
Colton Cowser in 87 games hit 300 with a 940 OPS.
That one I'm going to say slightly, but like, you know how much I love Cowser. He was a top 30 prospect for us going into the year, but still, yes, like to a degree, yes.
Heston Kjerstad got to the big leagues, hit 300 with a 900 OPS.
Absolutely. He exceeded my expectations. Awesome. Still one of my favorite stories in some time.
Kobe Mayo played 140 games, had a 970 OPS with 30 and 100.
This has been a pro Mayo podcast, but I ain't going to pretend that I knew he was going to do that, especially with the struggles in AA at the end of last year. He was one of the best hitters in the minor leagues, period. So absolutely exceeded expectations.
A 19-year-old Samuel Basayo got to AA and in 114 games hit 315 with a 950 OPS.
I knew he was a big ticket guy, barely had expectations for him going into the year. So yeah, he exceeded them.
Enrique Bradfield in his first 26 professional games, first 25 professional games, hit 290 with 25 bags.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it was like on par, a little bit above, like no power, like kind of what we thought. I didn't think they'd get Bradfield though. So from that lens, like better system than we thought going into the year. We knew they'd be drafting either middle of the first round or later. I didn't think Bradfield would fall to them. Are you done? Because there's a few other names that I think actually exceeded expectations.
No, I've got literally two more.
Yeah.
Dylan Beavers, 119 games and an 850 OPS.
I think relatively speaking, he may have exceeded my expectations as much as anybody because I saw him at the end of last year and I didn't love what I saw. When he was with Aberdeen, I thought the swing was a little chaotic. And then he comes out looking a lot smoother. We know how the Orioles develop these guys. I mean, to do what he did last year, and with some speed, the power, like he may have exceeded my expectations outside of Jackson Holiday being what he was as much as anybody in the system.
Jed Fabian in 120 games had 24 homers and 31 bags. That exceeded my expectations.
No doubt. Struggled in double, but I think what really put him over the top in terms of being a plus in this argument is that the defense is really good out there in center too. And that was a pleasant surprise.
And then McDermott exceeded my expectation.
No doubt. And then Cade Povich statistically finished kind of but I wouldn't say he exceeded expectations, but I thought he kind of met them. And then I'm trying to remember if there's anybody else. But I mean, that's all, pretty much everybody exceeded expectations.
Like nobody had a disappointing year. Joey Ortiz in 88 games in AAA hit 320, had an 890 OPS. Connor Norby hit 290, hit 21 homers, drove in 92. Like nobody was below expectations, and almost everybody of the big ticket names exceeded expectations.
Yeah,
that surprised me because I was like, okay, some of these guys are going to falter, and nobody fucking did.
Yeah, I'm with you. So it sounded like at first I'm like the Orioles, but no, I'm with you. They exceeded expectations in a lot of ways with the way that they performed this year. Let's just knock both of yours out. Who was the disappointing one for you?
Cleveland for me. I've always kind of had that soft spot for Cleveland, but there were a lot of guys that you kind of look at the season numbers and you're like you're better than this, buddy. Like George Valera, better than that. Giancarlo Noel, way better than that. I was expecting a big year from Angel Martinez. We did not get one.
He was one of the most disappointing, I think, in the minor leagues this year for me, honestly.
Yeah. Martinez, I was, sold on him being a borderline top 100 guy. Doug Nikhazy and Tommy Mace, I thought were going to be a lot better than they were. Jose Tena, I thought was going to be better than he was. And he was fine, but I was expecting him to level up. Manzardo kind of hurt. I know the narrative around Manzardo changed a little bit with that Savali deal. Noah Espino was really bad. I wish Cantillo's end of season numbers looked better. The only guys that really exceeded expectations coming into the year were Messick, Chase DeLauder, and break out Brito. Like that's really it.
And if you want to count like Tanner Bybee, Tanner Bybee doing what he did at the big league level. But no, I'm with you. I mean, it was pretty much disappointment across the board. And Brito is a guy that they acquired that I loved, right out of the gate. But Roquillo didn't really do anything to change the perspective on him at all either, right? Like it just kind of more of the same. Yeah, I thought they were disappointing in a lot of ways, and especially because the arms, you're always kind of waiting for that next Guardian's arm to come up and make a difference. And, some of that's out of their control. The Espino stuff is as unfortunate as it gets, and then I'm hoping he comes back to be anything close to what he was. And it was encouraging, whether it was procedural or not, that they added him to the 40-man just because that means that they still have some hope there. But we'll see how he comes back from that shoulder, scope or whatever they ended up having to do there. But Valero he finished strong. So, I mean, that was a positive. He was coming off of an injury, so you got to give him the benefit of the doubt, but that doesn't really matter. We're talking about the end of season performances of all these players. It was a net disappointment for him as well. And for the team, for the organization overall, almost all of them were a disappointment.
Yeah. And we fully graduated Logan Allen, Gavin Williams, and Bybee from that. So it's like, I'm sort of kind of not really factoring them in. If I truly factor them in as prospects and, kind of helping the organization, like, okay, that lowers the disappointment for sure. But the guys, especially the bats that I was expecting to take big leaps, just did not take big leaps.
With you. And for me, one of the more pleasant surprises was the Houston Astros. I know that a couple of the guys aren't with the system anymore, but that almost is part of the point, that they were able to, put together some packages that could go get them a, Justin Verlander. The fact that Drew Gilbert was as good as he was, and, he was a first round pick. There's a lot to like, but just really turned into a nice piece. The fact that they were able to turn Ryan Clifford into a piece to get a Hall of Fame starter, like a Justin Verlander. Clifford was awesome with the power that we saw. Jacob Melton is a top 100 prospect for us. That's a dude that, wasn't even drafted in the first round by them and just looks like he could be tooled out and really fun. Luis Baez, international free agent, top 100 guy for us as well. Just really showed out in his age 18-19 season. I'm really excited about him. How about Zach Denzenzo? He was awesome this year and had a really, really strong campaign and has turned himself into a borderline top 100 prospect. I think Baseball Prospectus has him, in their top 50. Joey Loperfido looks like a big league piece for them and had a wonderful season. Colton Gordon, a good arm that I actually really like. I thought they had a lot of guys put together good seasons. And I know that this isn't a great farm system, but I thought it was arguably the worst in baseball, and they were able to go get some major pieces, and they also have some major pieces still within their system. Kennedy Corona, a really underrated piece they ended up being so impressed by, they added him to the 40-man in the outfield. So I thought that this system was really impressive, all things considered, this year, because there was not really anybody that people were very excited about going into the season. So I definitely was pleasantly surprised by what they were able to do this year.
Bad team, disappointer?
Yeah, I was trying to think about it because I bounce around a little bit. The Giants are kind of perpetual disappointment for me, but I do think that system has improved a lot through their drafting recently, although we're kind of waiting to see what those guys can do. Harrison, it was a up and down year. Marco Luciano, up and down year. Wisenhunt ends up getting hurt after looking so good out of the gate. Walker Martin, we didn't see yet. Arias was only at the DSL. McRae still at the lower levels. Reggie Crawford, we barely saw. We've had certain guys kind of disappear into the oblivion, like a Will Bednar. Von Braun flopped in a big way. That was a guy that, we were concerned about the age and considering that he was playing at the lower levels and dominating, but still people were excited about him. He flopped. Jairo Pomares, a name that had some intrigue. He flopped. Iverson Arteaga, I'm still interested in him, and I still think he's really solid, but he disappointed overall. Carson Seymour didn't quite have the year that we were expecting him to have. Like, there was a lot of disappointment across the board, I felt like, in this system. That's been the case for the last couple years with this Giants system. So I think they could be a candidate. Is that a fair one?
Yeah, I think so. 2022, I feel like 2022 was the one that really kind of dinged their stock.
Yeah.
And then 2023 was residual. They were already low. So if you had any, high regard for the Giants as a system, That should be, I don't want to say all but gone, but they should be looked at as a mid-level system and not a top-level system. When coming into 22, they were looked at as maybe a top 5 system in the game.
Yeah, because I was just trying to think of another team, because I was with you on the Guardians. I thought they were the most disappointing. I don't know if there's another ball club that really
which is good.
Yeah.
We prefer non-disappointing.
Like the Marlins, I had no expectations. Like you could say the Marlins, though. I think the Marlins would probably be an acceptable answer considering how bad Jacob Berry was, how disappointing Giddy Capé was, somebody that had some top 100, smoke going into the year, not by us, but by some others. Jacob Miller, the recently drafted overslot second round guy, really disappointed on the mound. Dax Fulton gets hurt again. Victor Mesa Jr. was solid, but that ended up being one of their best position player prospects. Like Jose Gerardo, who was one of their most intriguing DSL guys, struggled. Joe Mack flopped pretty badly, who was their top catching prospect. Paul McIntosh, who was kind of their breakout guy last year, couldn't stay healthy, really struggled. I think you can make the case that those guys and in this system, Ian Lewis, somebody that a lot of people were interested in, did not have a good year. I think you could say the Marlins farm system was easily the most disappointing. Max Meyer doesn't come back, still hurt. I think you could probably put the Marlins there too.
Yep.
Real quick now, let's do some Bowman draft. So Bowman draft will be releasing in mid-December. So if you're wondering what to put on your Christmas list, that is definitely something we're hoping to do some like box rips and stuff like that. So definitely subscribe to the YouTube, hang out with us. We'll be doing some stuff with Bowman draft once that comes out. But I want to talk about some of these autographs, especially the top autographs. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to do different segments every week. We're going to do, top overall autographs today. We're going to be doing top autographs to chase outside of the first round, top pitcher autos for you psychos out there like Jack that like to collect pitchers and things like that. So we're going to draft it. So we're going to go back and forth, 5 picks each, and just kind of quick couple sentences on why we are going to be chasing this player in the product. You might have somebody else that you like more. There might be guys that are going to sell for more money in break spots or whatever it may be. Sure. Yeah. We're here to tell you the guys that we are most interested in and we would collect if we were you. So without further delay, I'll give you the first pick. So it's nice and easy for you.
All right. Easy. The way that we kind of want to look at this is we're sitting there and on a table, every single auto is out there. And it's, hey, you guys are going to snake it back and forth, like grab an auto, put it in your pocket, or don't put it in your pocket. Like, obviously, put it in the lamination, right?
Yeah, put it in the sleeve, and then
put it in the sleeve. Yeah. So it's like they're all sitting in front of you. Which one are you grabbing first? You're taking turns. For me, it's Langford. Wyatt Langford has to be my first pick. This guy, as soon as he hits the market, this is going to be a gaudy number. Number. So I'm going to grab it. And I'm immediately going to put it on eBay.
Yeah.
And I know the price is going to be sky high. So it has to be Wyatt Langford for me.
That's what sucks. It's like, I think the chase is going to be so crazy for Wyatt Langford. It's going to be fun though. There's nothing more fun when there's that name that everybody is going after, but there's going to be one of those where it's like hard to justify holding on to it because of how insane the chase is going to be for a while.
And that's why I'm grabbing him. It's like, I'm going to grab it. And that immediately becomes my most precious commodity in this market.
And you could justify holding it too, because I mean, it's insane how good he looked last year. And the fact that he can potentially break in on opening day for the defending champions. Like what? Like that's insane. So Stupid. He will be the biggest chase. And if you're wondering why we skip over some names, it's because these are the names that have autographs in the set. So Dylan Cruz signed a deal with another card company. He's not in this product. So that's why he's not going to be the next pick for me. I was going back and forth here because, you could go with a Max Clark. You could go with a Paul Skeens. I know people don't like pitchers, but when you have that, generational pitching prospect, I don't know if he's quite that, but he's close. There's going to be plenty of people excited about Paul Skeens cards. I can tell you that. He'll buck the pitcher trend. So I think for that reason, I'm going to take Skeens just because I think that's somebody that, and I think it's more like, I just don't want to wait for Max Clark. It's going to take a while. And I think Clark's going to be a popular chase because of the social media stuff. And, he was also right there as a number 3 pick. But I just feel like from that lens, I want the guy that's going to be in the bigs pretty quick, has a lot of, buzz and excitement. And, I think I can kind of realize the excitement of that card a little bit quicker. And I don't really want to wait for the ups and downs of a Max Clark potentially, who did struggle in low A a little bit last year. I think will be a great player, but just so much further off. So I go Skeens too. I'm going with the big name.
Okay. Do you want 3? Because I'm stunned that this guy is falling to 3.
You can go right ahead.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
This is skewing in my favor because I had the first pick.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay. Bryce Eldridge. I'm taking Eldridge.
You did it. You did it. You dirty dog.
Yeah, I know. Like, I'm stunned that you didn't take him too, because this is the most realistic shot that we have at a two-way guy.
Yeah.
I'm taking
I thought he'd fall to me. I'll be honest. I thought he was going to fall to me. So
nope.
I think I don't think he's going to be that popular of a name. Like, in terms of, I think he will be popular, but I think it's going to take a little bit of time for people to realize how exciting of a chase he is. Because we talked about the Giants farm system. I think, and you just mentioned it, way higher chance of being a two-way player. And he is the best shot that we have at being a legitimate two-way player in Major League Baseball moving forward. It might take a little bit more time, but I like Eldridge a little bit more than maybe chasing a Max Clark. Because again, you also have to think about what is it going to turn into with Clark. And I'm saying all these things, and I'm going to end up taking him very soon here. Yeah. But I love the Eldridge pick, because if I'm collecting a player, I want some novelty. I want some uniqueness. I want something to dream on here. And yeah, like you mentioned, you're dreaming on a power bat that could be a middle rotation arm. Like, that's going to be someone that everybody wants to collect. Can you imagine a guy gets up there and he's the second two-way guy, and there's a non-zero chance that he could be a two-way guy with Shohei on his team, and they could be double two-way guys? Like, there could be something so insane about that. I don't think that Eldridge is going to be a super popular chase out of the gate, because I think some people still believe that Reggie Crawford is the better two-way prospect in his own organization, which I would say is not correct. But it'll come around. And I think a lot of people listening to the pod will probably subscribe to this and be heavy on the Eldridge bandwagon. I'll tell you, I will be chasing his autos hard when it comes to this product. So I loved that Eldridge pick. I'm going to have to go Max Clark now, just because he's too high of a draft pick, and he's just too dynamic and explosive and exciting, and also comes with so much fanfare and all that good stuff. All the reasons why before, we didn't take him earlier. I think a lot of people are going to be chasing Clark right behind Langford. And I get it. But Clark's probably a guy that I'm pulling and selling, to be honest, and buying more product, and, just having fun and ripping more, because, Clark's definitely an exciting pull, and it'll be a very valuable pull, but definitely not someone that I'm like looking to hold or buy, or, just that I want to have a giant personal collection of. I'd rather have the Eldridges of the world, but I can tell you, if you pull one of each and go to sell them immediately, you're going to get more from the Max Clark.
Yep. I think so too. This is where I start to get a little creative, because I think those were the consensus top 4. I'm going like down the board, I think, but at 5, I'm going Colt Emerson with the Seattle Mariners. Yeah, I have to. This guy hit 350 in his first 28 pro games. He was 8 for 8 in the stolen base department, OPS well over 1,000. I mean, this guy has like Cole Young type trajectory, maybe better than Cole Young type trajectory. So I'm taking a guy that's going to be considered a top 5 shortstop prospect in baseball in due time.
And Cole Young's already become one of the biggest chases in his product, and he wasn't out of the gate. I can promise you that. And now he is. I mean, when I was at the National, I was trying to pick some up, and I couldn't believe what he was already going for. And I think Emerson, you mentioned it, one of the youngest guys in the class, but someone that will climb pretty quickly. And if you include the playoff games, which is, I think, should count, won't show up on Baseball Reference, he hit 391.
Damn.
With 1,055 OPS.
Because in 30 games.
In his 4 playoff games, he had 5, 7, 11 hits in 28 games. That's just ridiculous.
11 hits in 4 games.
Yeah, in 4 games. Yeah. 11 hits in 4 games. Just insane. I love the swing. I think the bat speed is really impressive already for a newly turned 18-year-old. We've seen exit velocities as high as 109 already. Like, he can hit the ball. That's a guy that I am holding too, though. I'm pulling, and I'm personal collection holding, because they ID these guys so well. And I think it's Cole Young cloth with more upside. I think you hit the nail on the head there. I'm going to go with Matt Shaw now. And if he's playing second base, I know people don't love to collect like second baseman or whatever it may be, but I don't really care because I think Matt Shaw, there's a world where he can hit 30 home runs and steal 20 backs. And that is very fun in a big market like Colorado or like Chicago. I think this guy is just special in terms of what he can do with the bat. Contact rates are so strong. The power is legit, and he can motor a little bit. He's fun. He's a really well-rounded ball player. If the glove can come along and he could stick it short, that would be awesome. I'm not counting on it, but regardless, I'll take a bat that could be in the big leagues as soon as next year. They're fast tracking him. And he could be a contributor for the Cubs as they hit their competitive window. And that's why I think Triantos, we talked about, could be available in trades, clear the way for Shaw a little bit. He could end up playing one of these spots here in the infield, or they'll try to find a spot for him eventually. What he did this past season to get to Double-A, to perform the way he did in Double-A, I just think he's an easy, safe guy to PC. And I also just really like the swing. It's a personal favorite. So top 50 prospect for us. He'll be in my personal collection.
Okay. Chase, number 7. I have the 7th pick in this out of 10. I love the organization that he's in. I love the talent. There's so much to dream on. He's sticking in center field. Dylan Head of the San Diego Padres.
You're being a shithead, man.
High OBP, top of the order, going to steal 1 billion bases. I can't, like, not realistically, but I can dream on the major league leader in stolen bases here. I can dream on a 60 to 70 stolen base season from Dylan Head, and I'm buying that.
I mean, he's a top 100 prospect for us for a reason. A late first round pick, immediately in the top 100 list. That shows you where he would have been on our big board. He was probably a top 15 guy on our big board. To have that kind of speed. Also, I think people really underestimate the field of hit. He can, and he actually has some sneaky impact. So Head is another one where I'm looking at probably a name that's overlooked, probably a name that people aren't collecting in bunches, that I'm going to be scooping up left and right. That's why I love these segments. It's really fun to talk about, but I'm like, I'm hurting myself right now. I'm putting other people onto the same thing I'm going to be attacking. But no, I'm really excited to go get some of his cards, because while it may be a little bit of a slower burn through the minors, so fun, so dynamic, and an organization that you mentioned just IDs and develops the hit tool guys and ends up finding a little bit more in there, like a Merrill. And I think he's kind of cut from a similar cloth there, and is going to be a very exciting prospect soon. Also, just to mention, because we're going to talk about best like team draft classes is one of the segments too. Like, you could buy a Padres spot if you're really hoping for Dylan Head. You get a Homer Bush, who was her 3rd round pick. Homer Bush was awesome in his pro debut, really fun. Like, that's where I love certain team spots and breaks and stuff, where like, even if you don't get your option 1, I'm not pissed that I got option 2. I remember when I was chasing Cowser, I ended up with a bunch of Norbies. Oh no, like, that's great. So I was like, all right, worst case scenario, I got some Norbies. We'll be doing more on like the under the radar names that you should be attacking very, very soon. We're at pick 8 here.
Pick 8.
Pick 8. There's a few different directions I could go here, but I'm going to go Mariner again. And this was a recent epiphany that I had because I was looking at a video that was put on MLB Central. Chase does a great job with that account. He had an open side swing of Ty Pete. And Ty Pete is going to be nasty. Mariners pick in the comp round, comp A. Dude, that explosiveness and that twitch, but also so controlled. That's a really fun swing. He's a crazy athlete. He's a super fun personality as well. He was on the Marine Layer podcast, our Mariners pod. He likes to edit videos. Like, he's a cool guy. I'm like, this guy's going to be his own hype machine. So I'm all in on Ty Pete. I think he's really fun. I love that pick by the Mariners. And I think he's going to be somebody that there might be some growing pains, but really fun and could be a very impactful and dynamic middle infielder. So, and a fun name. That does matter more than you think. People remember that. Oh, I got to get the Ty Pete card. I think Ty Pete's definitely one that people should be looking at.
Yeah. Preconceived notion here with number 9. Like, I think there's a lot of recognition for this guy, and I think that's going to up his price a little bit. I also think the stolen bases are going to up his price. I'm taking Enrique Bradfield at 9. I do think that Bradfield is going to be, I don't know the card market as well as you do, but I do know if I showed up at a convention and I saw Enrique Bradfield auto at a decent price point, I'm buying it. And again, 26 stolen bases in his first 25 pro games. If this guy gets on first, he's going to be standing at second within 3 pitches. That's how he functions. And I don't know how much, power there is in there, if there's any. Frankly, I don't care with this 9th pick. I feel pretty comfortable in taking Bradfield.
I like that because he's a high probability big leaguer too. Like, again, if he doesn't turn into an all-star, if you're PCing a player, and, I go through my drawer sometimes and I see some autos of like guys now that I've been doing this long enough to where like they're out of the league. They're not even an affiliated ball anymore. And it's like, what am I going to do with this? Like, even if he's a average big leaguer, it's like you could sell it eventually, or it's just like, okay, I have this cool autograph of an everyday baseball player. Like, even if he's Trent Grisham, like at least it's a big leaguer. Like, you're not going to just fully like, I collected a guy that is selling insurance now. So I think Bradfield, like there's a 0% chance that happens. So I like that scoop. And I kind of on that similar point, I couldn't there's some other names I really like. I like Rafi Velasquez. I like some of the other high school guys, but I already went high school heavy. I'm going to go Tommy Troy. Tommy Troy's got one of the best fields to hit, like one of the best field to hit guys in that entire draft class. And I just love the energy in Arizona. I think, him being part of a team that's going to be good for a long time. He's a guy that's going to climb quickly. He didn't have the pro debut that everybody was hoping, so I think he kind of slid under the radar, but he also wasn't bad. I think plus hit, sneaky pop, good athlete, fun player. And again, I really like how he fits into the Diamondbacks' future plans. There's a reason why they picked him on that shorter timeline. I think he's going to be fast-tracked. I'm a big Tommy Troy fan, and that's a card that Katuit Ketalier legend as well in the Cape Cod League. So that's another PC guy I'm definitely going to be just scooping up and holding on to, just because been a fan of his even from his time at Stanford. Just a satisfying player to watch hit and do his thing.
Yeah. Notable omission from the Bowman draft list. You mentioned no Cruz, also no Arjun Namala. I feel like Namala would have made this list if he was in there, but that's it for the top 10. 2 guys that I had on my top 11 board that didn't go picked were Ralphie Velasquez, like you mentioned, the Guardians, and then Chase Davis with St. Louis. I'm still somewhat fascinated by. No homers in his first taste of pro ball was interesting to me, considering he hit 18 his sophomore year and then 21 his junior year. I was like, where's the juice? But he drove in 23 in 34 games. So I don't know, like that's a guy that I'll be glued to the start of his 2024 season. I will say that.
No doubt. And that's a card that definitely I'm not upset if I pull, right? If that's the auto I get, it's like, oh, nice. Right. There's some autos where I'm like, duh, like, damn it. But that's one where I'm like, okay, I'm holding. Let's see how he does, at the start of the year. Because he's a data darling. A lot of people like him. We'll see if he can build on what was kind of an iffy start. A lot of other names that we're interested in. We're going to be talking about those guys in the next episode as kind of players outside of the first round that we're interested in. One other name that I think could have been easily interchangeable with Tommy Troy is Braden Taylor. Taylor's just I like the bat a lot, but I think Troy's just a little bit safer, and I like the team situation a little bit more. Just considering how the Rays always seem to stockpile all of these infielders and block guys and just stash them in the upper minors. So that's kind of where things settle there. The link, if you want to see the full kind of checklist, is in the episode description. So go check that out. That'll do it for this episode. Thank you all for such great questions. And we will be talking a bunch of different things. We might do a redraft soon. We're going to do kind of disappointments, biggest surprises, a lot of different fun topics as we move forward, and then a couple more player interviews to look forward to as well. If you could leave a rating, help us grow the show, would really appreciate it. And subscribe to the YouTube. Keep an eye out. We're going to be doing a little bit more on the breakdowns on the just baseball side of like Jung-Hoo Lee and Shota Imanaga and all that good stuff. Short form YouTube dives on the just baseball YouTube. So go subscribe there, and then some more on this side as well. As always, thank you for listening. Look forward to talking prospects with you later this week.